Hey everybody, this is Eddie Babbage, founder, CEO of Timeline Genius, your host here of the Wedding Industry Insider Podcast, back with another fantastic episode interview for you. I'm here with Sunna Yassin and I'm Molly Jones Hennis, and they are the owners of Bash Please, a luxury wedding and production company based in San Francisco and Los Angeles. So, Molly and Sana, thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited to chat with you today.
We're excited to chat with you.
Awesome. Yeah, so just to kind of give people a preview for what we're going to do in this interview, I want to move through and unpack and mine gems from your collective experience, both in building Bash Please, but also from the experience that you had leading up to this, because I know you both had relevant industry experience leading up to it. So before we kind of get into that deep dive, would you each mind, maybe just in turn, giving a quick sort of intro overview of how you got to be where you are and what your respective backgrounds are?
Yeah, I can go first. So I started in hotel planning, doing kind of catering and conference service management, for the Hilton brand of hotels for quite some time, about a little over 10 years. And then was ready to kind of make a transition into a luxury property. And so kind of kept the hotel journey going and became the director of events at a five-star luxury property here in San Francisco, and kind of opened a lot of doors and kind of got me into, I would say, the luxury wedding market. It's also where I met Molly. But I had also worked pretty closely from kind of hotel planner perspective with another great planner that's based in San Francisco, and took a job as their director of events. And I was there for about 3 years, 3 seasons, 3 years. And so learned a ton of kind of what it took to kind of do private planning for kind of top level clients from a wedding perspective and a corporate and social perspective. Um, and then from there, kind of worked in private catering, where I actually worked alongside of Molly. And I think that's where we kind of honed in a lot of skills. So we had kind of the hotel and hospitality background really dialed in, the private planning, design, logistics honed in. And I think I was really missing like what it took to do private catering on kind of a top scale. And so got that experience and worked again with Molly, and I think together we just kind of collectively decided that we wanted to kind of move into the next phase, and kind of go into business together and go back into the private planning world and basically be able to use all of the skills. So I think our paths kind of are pretty similar. So I'll let Molly tell her story and then we can kind of come together.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Very similar paths. I also kind of started in hospitality from the very beginning of my career. Similar to Sana, I also worked in a hotel. I worked for the Ritz-Carlton in San Francisco, and first started out in kind of their guest relations department and taking care of both repeat guests, high profile guests that were there. And then I also moved over to the catering and conference services department. And then once I left there, I went directly to the private catering company, which is where we kind of ended our last career, I guess, before we took over and began Bash Please. And you know, in that company, over the 10 years that I was there, we did a lot of obviously offsite catering that really began doing a lot of event production. So that's where I also learned skills of understanding what it is to, you know, tent a massive field and do build outs and bring in power and, you know, restrooms when are needed and flooring and just kind of the full event scope as far as things. And, you know, it really was once Sana and I were working there together that after a period of time, we kind of, you know, looked at each other over, you know, many meals and glasses of wine and realized, I think that it's time for us to leave and start something on our own.
That's really cool. You made me reflect. Timeline Genius is my third company. You made me think of when I was starting my first company. I was practicing law and there was a buddy of mine. We were both really into electronic music, and we would like take our lunch breaks and meet up together. And there's this like energy, this excitement when you're like planning. Like, tell me a little bit about that sort of seminal, like early sort of stage process where you all started to kind of have this idea. Wait a minute, this is a thing. I think we want to work together. I think we want to launch a company together.
I think that's such a good question. I think, we both at that time had a boss slash mentor that we loved and was such a hard worker. And yet she was working for somebody else she was basically the CEO of this big catering company. And I think watching her, we learned a lot, but we also learned like, hey, wait a minute, we don't want to work this hard and do this much for someone else. Like we can be, the owners, we can be this person and we can hire great people that can work for us. But I think one of the things that we did first was just, unfortunately, I think it's like most people, you list all the things that you could do better or you think that you could do better, right? So you're like,
Yeah.
here's all the things that we would do differently. And it's funny because a lot of those things we don't do now. You think you have this master plan of how to make things different, how to make things better. But I think overall, from the business side of things, we were probably a little bit naive of what it kind of took to have two offices. I mean, an office in San Francisco and an office in LA, which are very close, a really quick flight, but it takes a lot. And, just having multiple employees in different places. And this was all started, I mean, so many years ago before like working remote and Zoom and Google Meet and all of this stuff was a factor. So you were, on the phone, maybe on FaceTime, rarely.
Right.
But it was
Right.
just such a different time. So I think we probably started a lot of conversations with, we're not going to do this, but we are going to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. And what year are we talking when you guys first started kind of brainstorming and getting the sense that you wanted to do something here?
Probably 2015 or so. And,
Gotcha.
and we
Yeah.
really kind of, by the end of the year, we had enough conversations of what is this going to look like? Where is the help that we're going to need to bring in and kind of our earlier teammates that we kind of brought on too. Um, and so again, lots of dinners and conversations and glasses of wines and even after when we thought we had the perfect plan, we probably reinvented that plan 30 times over the years.
So you found yourselves, did you do like a business plan, strategic plan? Like were you really writing and formally planning? I know there's a whole spectrum. Some people just kind of leap and then look. Some people like plan, replan. Like is that kind of where you all were? Like talk to me about the planning process and whether or not it played a real factor in your success as you built the company. Like was it productive, the planning that you did?
I think it was a little bit of both. We definitely
Yeah.
did not have the formal write out a business plan, although in hindsight, that might have helped a little bit. I think we really both got ourselves to a comfortable place that we were ready to leave our corporate jobs that we had had and kind of take that leap. I also think because we had been in the industry for so many years, we were so fortunate that we had so many connections, so many
Yeah.
contacts.
Yeah.
Because really, when you begin a company, you're just as good as until someone's ready to book you for your very first event. And so I think that we were really lucky as far as that kind of goes, that we had so many different kind of contacts and vendors, both in Los Angeles and in San Francisco, that the events kind of just started coming in and we were able to, build our portfolio and kind of hit the ground running.
That's really cool. You know, it's funny as we're talking. And I totally just get this vibe just right away from you all. You mentioned in the pre-interview like this notion of being authentic. You know, I think it's easy sometimes on podcasts or Facebook Lives or whatever to kind of do this surface level kind of like talk that's not really about the real stuff. So my mind kind of goes to the real stuff here. You all, one thing that there are a few things that are very unique. You know, I've had so many people who've been doing this podcast for years. It's very rare that I get to interview two people and that you have a partnership, right? And I've had partners in every venture, and it's like I'm married. There's nothing closer. This is just my own sort of spiel. There's nothing closer to marriage than like having a business partner. Like it's really, it's like this sacred thing, you know, you're in this act together, you know, and like you got to work things out and you're going to have different ideas about things. Like maybe each of you in your own words, like what has the impact of having a partnership and how have you all managed to navigate that to be again at this destination that you've reached with your company?
I know I wouldn't do this alone. I can tell you that right away. There's not a
I
chance I
love
would have
that.
done this alone or continue to be doing it if I wasn't.
Tell me why, Molly, why do you say
I mean,
that?
I just think that we have so many different skills. We have a lot of the same skills, but we also really thrive in different ways. And what Sana can bring to the table are definitely places where I maybe don't feel as comfortable or as confident to be able to do that. And I think that she can say the same. And I think that that also comes down to if we're in a place where we might disagree about something, really we kind of look at it and see who is more passionate about whatever that specifically is. And usually it just, that's kind of how we resolve it too. Yeah, I mean, I think it is similar to a marriage, right? You kind of do have to pick your battles, so to speak. Not that we have huge battles, but of course things come up and it is definitely like, I mean, I think one of the things we probably say that a lot is I don't really care that much. So like if you really feel strongly about this, like take the leap, have at it, let's try it, whatever kind of comes after that. Or I think if one of us really feels like something isn't a good idea, I mean, even take, I definitely know for maybe some people that are listening that are first starting out, you're hungry and you want to take all the business. And it actually happened really, I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. It happened so early for us as partners. There was this amazing inquiry that we had, and we just, I mean, we nailed the first phone call. We nailed the first in-person meeting. They were excited. It was an incredible destination. It couldn't have been more perfect for us. We were so excited. And then as conversations just started, things got kind of weird. And there were just some questions that felt a little off. And while we wanted the job, we both kind of looked at each other and said, whoa, whoa, let's take a step back. The reason why we're doing this now and the reason why we took this jump is so that we don't have to do things that one of us isn't comfortable with. And if one of us is strong about not being comfortable with it, we've got to hear each other out. And it was actually a job that we ended up right before they were going to sign our contract. We ended up having that conversation and just saying, you know what, we thought about it and we just don't think right now like this is a good fit for our company. And it doesn't have anything to do with, I think people get so caught up in like it's not a good fit for our brand. Like it's not that. It's more of just this is a really intimate business and you spend a year sometimes if not longer with people. I mean, COVID is a great example. There's sometimes we had for 3 years. If you're not on the same page or the same wavelength as those people and there's nothing like-minded about the two groups, it can be really complicated. And not that every job is going to be super fun, but there comes a point where you have to agree on some things. And I think that's a good example of sitting down and having the conversation, like what do the next 6, 9, 12 months look like with this event in our lives? Like how does it affect you? How does it affect me? How does it affect the team? So just kind of having those ongoing conversations. And I think also knowing when to like maybe let things just slide and usually they work themselves out. Or if it's like, hey, we need to have like a powwow about, this that happened or that happened. But I think you do kind of get into a sync where sometimes I'm thinking of this email that I'm going to write and I wake up in the morning and Molly already sent the email. So, it's like, I think you just kind of know where somebody pushes and then somebody pulls.
So, Sana, just to pick up on what you just said, you said something there that really made me remember one of the things that I learned from working with, my partners. And it's that sometimes, and I also don't want people to tune us out. If you're like, oh, I don't have a partner, this isn't relevant to me. I think if you're working with a team, it is relevant. If you're working with people, which all of us are, these
Yeah.
principles are relevant. And it's that sometimes I remember kind of learning this lesson there would be something that seemed like a really big deal at the time, like what should the business card format be? But then, like in hindsight, I'm like, you can end up debating these things, but then in the big picture, they don't matter that much. Like, does that resonate with either of you? Like,
1000%.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many little, and I think to Molly's point of like not wanting to do it alone, I think there's just so many decisions that you have to make. And just starting out, if somebody's kind of new to the scene, it's like, do you even need business cards? Like, and then who do you ask, if you don't
right,
have a
right,
partner? But I think like one piece of advice I would give to anybody listening, whether they're starting out, they have a partner, they don't have a partner, we're lucky. We have a ton of friends in the industry. I think because we've worked in hotels with other planners. We worked for the catering company where we did sales, and some of these planners at that point were our clients. Um, I think everybody needs like support and needs somebody to go to if it's to just bounce the question off of, or if it's a venue that you haven't worked out that seems like they're saying weird things. Like you just have to have somebody that you can shoot an email to or text to or pick up the phone and call and just kind of talk it out with somebody, and not that you have to go to somebody for every single thing, but I think there's some things that kind of happen in this industry where you're like, wait a minute, I can't be the only one. And we do that all the time. We're like, let me call, this person in New York and see like what is happening there, or, that sort of thing. So I think just having some sort of network, even if you're working just at this stage in your career or this stage in your planning process alone, like you can't do it all alone. At some point you have to get help.
absolutely. Another thing that I kind of found, and I'm wondering to what degree, because I think this is a very nice, segue into talking to you all about your team, which is definitely something that I want to dive into because I know people, as I mentioned in the pre-interview, a lot of people listening to us right now either know somewhere in the back or front of their minds that like they should be building a team because it can feel like you're drowning if you're doing all this stuff, as you said, probably by yourself. It can be really tough. Or maybe they have a team, and that in and of itself conjures up like, okay, how do I manage in the optimal way? I want to get to all of that, but just kind of on this partnership and working with people front, I wonder how it lands with you all. I feel like this notion, well, something that I've kind of internalized is trying not to take things personally. I really like for the Timeline Genius team, like one of our core values is this notion of like, we're all just trying to get the optimal result. And it's human nature, if you have an idea and somebody has an objection or critique, to take that personal. But if you can just detach from that and just be like, no, none of this is personal. We're just trying to, all of us, just do what's right. Like, does that land with you all? Like, how does that, Molly? I see you're kind of nodding your head. What's going through your mind as you kind of hear that principle?
I mean, I think exactly. Every idea is a good idea. It might not be the right idea for what we're doing, but I think
Yeah.
that one of the things that's great about our team, and actually just yesterday, this was kind of a very perfect example. We have a potential client that wanted to, find out a few more of what our creative ideas could be for their event. And
Mm-hmm.
while, we don't usually give away a lot of secrets before we kind of start working with them, we felt that this was the appropriate kind of leap to take to get this. And because we have a team of 7 of us, including the 2 of us, we were able to quickly get in a meeting with all of us, a big brainstorm session, everyone just throw out ideas of what we could do. And then Sana and I were able to kind of take from all of these great ideas, which were the ideas that were going to be perfect for this kind of event. And I think that, every day, the convenience of being able to have someone who you are bouncing things off of is great. Out of our kind of 2 offices, we're kind of split almost in half. We've got 4 people in Northern California and then 3 people in Southern California too. So someone always has someone by them to, bounce an idea off of.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I guess kind of segueing, as I mentioned, into this aspect of team. You've got a team of 7, including you all. Like, what would you say is the secret, if you will, to building a great team? Let's just kind of start with, because I know, and I'm sure you all have faced this, right? Like, as partners, you learn to trust each other. You're doing this at a certain point, you realize we need to have other helping hands here to delegate to. But, and you guys feel free to shoot me down if this doesn't apply to you, but like, you know, you've set this standard for how you like things to do. You've set this quality standard, right? And that's your reputation. That is priceless, right? And you don't want that to drop. So as you bring new people on, the fear can be, well, are they going to do it the right way? Are they going to do it at the standard? Like, building a team is tricky. How do you all kind of manage that issue as you're bringing people on, making sure they're meeting your standards and taking that sort of trust fall to trust that they can do that job?
Yeah. I think one of the things that we're both really fortunate is we've worked for great people. I mean, of course, we've
Yeah.
worked for not so great people, but we're lucky. Like, there are a handful of people that we've both worked for in our career that have been amazing, amazing bosses. So I think we had a good foundation to start.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's really hard just in general and people struggle with is, there's like time that it takes to train and to teach. And when you're doing stuff, especially in today's society, like everything is so instant, it's instant Google, instant, you can find it on Instagram. You can do things so fast that if you don't slow down and take the time to like train and teach and show people how to do things, like they won't be able to do it. They definitely won't be able to do it your way. And then I think the mindset is, well, I can just do it faster. Like, let me just do this quick.
Right.
And if that's the case, then you're going to just do everything yourself forever. And then there's other aspects in your life where maybe you should have help, like a personal assistant or, people to help in your day to day life versus your business. So I think you have to thrive in wanting to give back what you were like what we received earlier in our career, which was like some sort of mentorship, being there for people, like having fun with people. I think that's a huge thing that gets overlooked. I mean, we're not, a Facebook or a Google or a huge company, but I think we get to do really fun things. We get to travel really incredible places, stay cool places, meet incredible people, which, listen, I mean, it's not to say everyone that works for us is going to work for us forever. They won't, but they're also presented with incredible clients that they might connect with and get a referral for or get a job down the road with, so there's a ton of opportunity. It's up to them whether they want to take the opportunity or not. But I do think, especially having a remote office in LA where we only go sometimes, it is hard to kind of keep tabs. But I think both of us kind of split how we do that. Obviously, technology now like really helps. But I think one of the things, just to go back to what you said that I think we might have brushed over, is like we try not to take anything too personal. Like if somebody sends, an email or doesn't say the right thing or whatnot. It's hard enough being, especially in weddings that are so personal. Like emotions for our clients and their families are so heightened, and sometimes there's issues or drama that we have to take a step back and just remember for us, like, this is our business. And it's hard because there's not a ton of boundaries. Like, we try to work business hours, but people also have to plan their events and weddings outside of their own business hours. So we try to be flexible, but we also try to, I think, put up a shield that's kind of like, this is still our business. And so we're not going to let your emotions affect our emotions, kind of thing.
I love that. Yeah, so much there. And Molly, what are your sort of thoughts on, the right way to go about building a team, and especially vis-a-vis managing this notion of like, I know I can do this and I'll do it well. There's a little bit of a trust fall in the idea of having somebody else come on and do it.
Exactly. And I think that a lot of people that sometimes come into this business before they've had any experience maybe assume, oh, we're going to parties, we're going to weddings, but our work is incredibly hard. It's really rewarding, it's really fun, but I think that, personality does play a big piece into this. As Sana mentioned, we get to travel to a lot of great places, but we also need to have people on our team that are good at traveling, can be, self-sufficient when they're getting somewhere to kind of get to the next place. It's not, someone that we need to babysit the entire time. And, hopefully every now and then they might be able to even grab us a glass of water too, and that kind of thing. But I think that specifically kind of when people have started with us, they also may not know necessarily where their strengths and weaknesses are, or they might have an idea that they want to come in and do something specific in our company, but then later on find out that's actually not what I love. I love this aspect of it. So really kind of the first, I would say, year or so of when we have someone join our team, they're doing everything, so they might help Sunna with some creative aspects of the event. They might have, be helping me with something logistical or booking shuttles or looking at guest lists and that type of thing, just so that they can really get experience in everything. And then, at the end of kind of the year, we'll sit down and see, what were areas that they really enjoyed, what areas, do people want to be able to get more experience and learn things. And I think that every year in kind of our team, we try and change some of the kind of roles and responsibilities just so that people can learn things. There might be a year that someone on our team is managing, transportation for all of our events from beginning to end. They, learn it for 1 year, they master it the next year. And then it might be time for them to move and learn more about food and beverage. So we might have someone else kind of come in to do that, but that also will kind of just give everyone well-rounded experience and eventually be able to jump in and handle anything.
I love that, Molly. You said something that's making me kind of, I'm going to go down a little tangent, but I will bring us back to team building and team management. And the thing that, just struck me is like you just take, again, kind of the notion of real talk. Like, this job isn't easy, right? I've talked to, interviewed, and gotten to be friends with enough planners to know, like, I mean, there's so much inherent stress. And beyond just the planning aspect, you're a business owner, right? Um, in your years, and between the two of you have a lot of experience, what would you say is one of the, just stream of consciousness here, the biggest, most valuable and powerful lessons, and I'll start with you, Molly, that you've learned over the course of building your company?
Gosh, that's a good question. I need a second here to really think about it. There's been a lot of things specifically. I think some of the most powerful lessons are, learning that, you don't necessarily know everything going in. Definitely, I think that when I was younger, and sometimes you do this when you're younger too, you definitely kind of try to assume that you know more than you do, just to make sure that you can, get the job, stay the job, do all of that. But I'm still learning things every single day. And so I think if anything, I really realized that you don't know everything. You learn new lessons, you learn new techniques. There are constant days, even from our clients, that teach us things too. So that, and I think that that's something too, that when a lot of planners begin, and again, there's that whole kind of saying, like, you fake it till you make it type of thing, and not necessarily with all of your skills, but definitely coming across as, knowing more, and you never really stop learning.
And, just to speak to anybody who may say, well, of course I don't know everything, not that anybody would. Why is this, out of all the things that you've kind of learned, experienced, and the ways you've grown over the years, why is this notion that, like, I don't know everything, something that's really jumping out to your mind? And, like, just tell me a little bit more, too, about, like, how you kind of learned that. Was it, like, you found yourself, as entrepreneurship tends to do, you're in a, like, holy crap, what's happening here? Like, I don't know the answer. Like, was it like a moments like that kind of instilled this? Like, how did you learn the lesson, and why is that something that for you is such a meaningful lesson?
Right, yeah, exactly. Before a pandemic hit, we had no idea what the protocol was for canceling everything and starting over next year.
I thought of that.
And I do think that it's a little bit of trial and error. Sometimes you're put in a situation and you have to figure out quickly how you are going to react to that. And then maybe you did it the way you wanted to, or maybe you learned, next time I'd like to do something kind of different. We have joked many times, like, the next time there does come to be some type of pandemic or, global disaster, we're ready to go. We've got the skills, we're ready to do all that. Hopefully that's not happening again in our lifetime, but
It's not always also that just eye-opening kind of awakening moment. Even
Right.
in
Right.
the years that I did, catering and thinking about just like the, etiquette of a dinner party and setting a table and kind of all of those things that, of course, I know how to set a table. I did it growing up every single night for my family, but now knowing kind of what it actually takes to do that in a professional environment, it's just the constant learning over and over and kind of, honing in on skills.
As a wedding planner, you know how important it is to create detailed wedding day timelines for your events. But creating your timelines can be a tedious and time-consuming job. Until now. Because Timeline Genius lets you create beautiful, detailed wedding day timelines with ease. And it keeps everything you need on the wedding day in one central place. Here's how it works. First, Timeline Genius saves all your clients, vendors, and venues in your Rolodex, so you don't lose time looking for their information. And when you're ready to create a new timeline, you simply enter the key information for your wedding. Click a button, and voila! Timeline Genius magically gives you a customized timeline for your event, where all the details are laid out and the times are calculated for you. From there, you can easily edit your timeline by adding or deleting items, inserting images, changing font styles, and customizing everything to your liking. You can also instantly shift the times for as many items as you want. And when it comes to your clients and vendors, Timeline Genius lets you give them the highest level of service. You can send them tailored timelines, showing only the items they're involved in. And you can collaborate by inviting them to a mobile-friendly, web-based version of the timeline. You can even set text message reminders to automatically go out on the wedding day. And once you've completed your perfect timeline, you can download it or email it out as a beautifully styled PDF. And that's Timeline Genius, a smart software that will help take your wedding planning to the next level. Start your free trial today.
You know what I love about what you're saying, Molly, and this is kind of like a meta point, kind of like just listening to what you're saying, is the mindset of being like, if you think you know everything, and nobody, if you ask them, do you know any, nobody's going to be like, yes, I'm omniscient. But like, actually, all of us can I think it was Jen Sincero. It was, I don't know, have you guys ever read any of her stuff? She's really cool. She wrote a book called You're a Badass, and it's she said the two words I know, or like I already know, can be so powerfully limiting, because the minute you say like I know, you're actually shutting down, right? Like you're closing yourself off to new ways of doing things, new ideas. And I think, yeah, that it's just really cool to have that beginner's mind of just like, no, there's always stuff for me to learn here. So that's really cool. For you, Sana, like, what would you sort of say for you in your years of experience has been like a really powerful and valuable lesson for you that you've learned?
So hard because I feel like there's so many like instances that we've like actually been in that might be helpful to like talk about. But then I think overall, the biggest thing that I've learned, I think in this industry, is you really just have to be honest with people. I think that sometimes if something starts to spiral, and whether it's something that happened with a vendor or something that happened with a venue or a hotel or anything, the more you start to kind of change the narrative of what happened, or like not be fully transparent with what happened, and you start to kind of build in like layers of things, it always will come back to bite you. I think that you have to just sometimes lay out all the cards, and even if that means like, hey, we really messed this up, like we did not do this the right way, and here's what we can do now to try to like course correct, but it wasn't right, and it's going to either cost a lot of money to correct, or some people might not be a part of the job anymore or things like that. But I've just personally learned, like early on, when I would try to like basically lie, right? Like lie your way out of something, it only ends up biting you after. And so I think the biggest thing is, and we're lucky that now, because of those mistakes that we made early on, maybe when the stakes weren't so high, that we can call a vendor and say, I messed up and I need help and I need to get out of this and I need you to help me figure out how like we can work together to get out of this or put a spin on something um, to make it seem, like there is a way out, even though it might be really difficult. I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like I mean, unfortunately, you have to make mistakes, but there's so many mistakes that I've made that I would just never make again because of, the lessons that you learn from them. But I think that's the biggest thing is to just first, like, recognize how it happened and what happened and how to not do that again. And then just really ask for help from whoever is involved or whoever can help. And sometimes you just got to fall on the sword.
Gosh, I love that, Sana. I feel like more than ever, we live in a culture and time when like blame shifting, like nobody's gonna just be like, it's not my fault. Here's why. And from a self-serving political standpoint, it makes sense, right? You're just, at least in the short term, you're like, look, if this blame falls on me, it could affect my pocketbook, my wallet, my bank account, right? But I just think that's really profound because, on the surface, first of all, you're building trust, right? Even if somebody gets upset or you do take a hit, there's an integrity element there that you're building trust in the eyes of the people that you work with. But also, not to wax into philosophical or ethical sort of matters, but like I find for me, there's a real power that I can stand in when I know about me that I'm going to keep it real and honest, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's hard, even if it's like not self-serving, that allows you to move through your day and your business interactions with like a confidence of like, no, like I'm a good person, right? Like I'm going to do the right thing. I really like that. So again, that was a little tangent. I couldn't resist going down, and I'm sure everybody that heard both of your answers to that is happy that I took that little digression. But I do want to come back to this sort of arc or theme of team building, getting just another level down into the weeds here. How do you do it? Like, how do you find the people? How did you find the people that are on your team? I can tell that you're happy with your team dynamic. Not that anything is completely problem free. There are always going to be tensions and challenges and all that to navigate. But how did you find the people that you currently have on your team?
So one of our team members has been with us since the beginning. We've just known her. I think we've just known her forever and just kind of been in the industry together.
Okay.
One of the great things about this industry, even if you don't have a core team that like works in the office or works on events with you, is when you get to event day, you have, I mean, unless you're doing a very small thing,
Right.
you can't really be alone. And the nice thing is that is how you build, relationships. So one of the team members that we have, her and I worked kind of day of stuff like on site with another planner and just kind of always remained friends and stayed in touch. And she's, been with us since then. Abby, who works in our San Francisco office, was a referral from another person who used to work for us kind of as a production manager when we had really big jobs. And she was like, I have the perfect person for you. You have to meet her. And I think 20 minutes after meeting her, we were like texting her like, oh my God, thank you. She's amazing. And yeah, it's kind of always been through another avenue. I mean, I would say like even before we've ever like posted on social media or anything like that, we'll ask kind of inner industry friends like, hey, we're looking for, someone in our LA office, or we're looking even for just somebody on site. We need more help. Do you know anyone? And again, I think if you have like a strong network, people will say like, oh, this person came on site and helped us with this, or this person was great, or this person's moving here and, they need work, or if you have something remote, there's this person. And we've done a lot. We have employees that have kids, and so they have different schedules. And, some people have, significant others that have taken jobs and they've had to change their, location or life. And I think we try to be accommodating if people are worth it and doing a really good job. I think that's another thing. Like, you have to know that getting new people and training people and taking time with people is expensive, but you also have to constantly have new blood to keep things thriving and new. So I think it's like a balance of that.
Yeah, it sounds like a very high touch, and that makes it easier. You guys can, again, correct me if this is wrong, but it makes it easier to kind of have that trust when it's somebody you're like, this isn't just a random resume that came through. Like, I've known this person. I've already gotten to get a feel for who they are as a person and how they like to work. You're building that kind of trust before they even set foot in your company. Um,
Yeah, and I also think too, I mean, it's such a small team there. I mean,
yeah,
it's probably a
yeah,
big team for our industry, I would say, but
right.
in like a global sense, it's small. But I think it's also like everybody gets to know each other, and not that we're so embedded into everyone's personal lives, but when you know our husbands and you know our dogs and
Yeah.
maybe things that are going on personally, then it's I think it's easier for people to show up and want to do a really good job for you when they know a little bit more about you. Like, for example, at the end of last season, I really hurt my back and I couldn't like do what I normally do on site. And just to watch everybody kind of like rise up and kind of take, a little bit more ownership and a little bit more lead because I couldn't do that. It's, stuff like that is really important and it's really special. And I think just knowing that you can see that and know, okay, well, if that happens to so and so, everybody's there to kind of take the lead on what needs to happen.
Do either or both of you have any views on how to know when it's time to add the first employee to your team or the subsequent? Like, is there any way of, just financially or just intuitively, how do you know when it's time to kind of take that? Because it's a risk, right? Like, you're responsible economically, financially for these people that, and it can be like, oh, I do want to grow, but I don't know about that, like, how do you all know when it's time to add people to your team?
Well, I think on the financial piece of it, the slight advantage that we have is that most of our events are planned so far into the future that you
Mm,
kind of know what the next year is going to look like well before you get that year. So, unlike a lot of other different sectors, we do have the forecasting ability a
mm-hmm.
little bit better to be able to kind of know that. And I also think that when it just comes to knowing that we need to add someone on, it might be the two of us that are just to a point where I can't do all of the things I'm doing right now unless I already give up this. And who can do that? And we didn't grow to 7 people overnight by any means.
Right,
We
right.
definitely, you start by adding one person on. We realize, obviously, by the 2 locations that we're in, that we have a lot of business in both of those areas. So, cutting out San Francisco or cutting out LA is not a possibility. So making sure that we've got people kind of in both areas there. And we've got offices, so we need to make sure that someone's in each one of those offices that can manage them, and make sure that those are both kind of running too. And I think that probably the most recent person that had joined our team, and we knew her also for years just because she had been in the industry too. We knew where her kind of big skills were. And when we started saying, hey, we need someone to do this, we both kind of looked at each other and knew exactly who it should be. We were fortunate that when we reached out, she was actually leaving another job at the time and it worked out. So I think there's, it's a little bit of when we get to a place where we can't do everything we're already doing by growing. And also because, over the years from when we started to now, our events are, larger, not necessarily always in just size of guests, but scale, how many days. When you're going to a destination location, you've got to be able to, get to France and arrive there rested and ready to go and hit the ground for 5 days because as much as fun as it is, it's still not a vacation.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's really cool. I think, yeah, no, I get the feel for how you all have, kind of gradually bolted on and pieced together this team that is totally working for you. As I turn, my mind, I guess, is now kind of turning to the management of your team, right? Because getting the team together is kind of the first piece. And hopefully there are people, like the word that kind of jumped out in my mind as you all were talking, and I think Sunna that you said it, it's networking, right? There's a network. You meet people. That's why it's important to go to conferences or to be in various groups and just to, befriend people that you're actually working with and collaborating with, because you're building that network. The thought that kind of, or question that comes to mind is like, how do you then manage, specifically, you want to delegate responsibility to people when you have a good team. I don't know about you all, but there's also can be like a tension between like, I want to give space for you to do this, but I also have a view about how this should be done. I don't know if that resonates with you. Are there times when that's like challenging? And if so, how do you all kind of thread that needle?
I think that resonates with everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the things that we've said, or at least I know I've said to Molly, is like, we don't want people that we have to micromanage.
Yeah.
I mean, in today's like world, like we do have kind of quote unquote office hours, because I think for a minute there are things we're getting like just so relaxed in the world where like, nothing made sense anymore. So I think we definitely try to keep office hours. And I think that's like for everybody's mental health too. But, more so than anything, we try to be really clear with expectations and deadlines. Like, hey, I need this done and we need this done by X date. But the way we have our group set up is, again, everybody kind of knows what they're responsible for. And so you can kind of work at your pace within that. And then we do meet every Tuesday as a team to kind of go over kind of everybody's like quote unquote task list and kind of our overall event production, like where everything kind of is in its stages. And we're, constantly texting, constantly emailing. And I think the other thing too is we're together a lot just because we're on site for events. Like we were just in Mexico with everybody for 5 days, So there's lulls in that where you're talking about stuff and that sort of thing. But I think you have to find people that you trust where you're not standing over their shoulder. Like, are you done with that? Is this done yet? And I think also everybody that works for us currently is younger than us. And I think we are also coming from two different like generations of training and work. And I think that in a weird way, even though everything seems faster now, I think that people kind of move a little bit slower. And I think that we come from a place of like moving faster because information was slower. I don't know. It's hard to, I don't know how you would
That's
like
interesting.
It's like we come from a world of like, I don't know, a little bit more of a hustle, right? We didn't have, all these social media outlets to find anything. Like if you wanted to find a venue in Santa Barbara, like you had to find the people that had the venue in Santa Barbara. It wasn't just like these layers of social media or Google where you could find things. So I think that is a little bit of a difference, but I do think that our employees see that in us still. Again, it's like, we come back from an event and we're, also helping, put stuff away or cleaning up or taking out the trash or, doing that kind of thing, going to pick stuff up for a client, taking their dress to the cleaners, whatever those things may be. And I think that also instills in people's minds, like they're in the down and dirty. We're not sitting here on a platform pointing, saying, do this and do that. And I just think it keeps us more in line with what's happening so we don't feel out of touch.
Yeah, I really like that. And then just logistically, do you all, so you have your biweekly meeting, how do you just sort of manage the team? I assume it's, even if you're spending time together, there's a large component of this that is like remote. Are there software tools, that you're using for like team collaboration? Like what's your sort of setup for just logistical management of your team?
So as far as kind of the way that the team is broken out, so when it comes to events, Sunna really leads all of our events from the creative side of things. And that's everything from bringing on a creative vendor, like a photographer, like a florist, but she also oversees everything from, the look, the feel of the event, paper goods, that type of thing. So there are people that are in our greater team that work really directly with Sunna on all of that. And then I probably would take the lead more on things logistical and also things like contracts and budgets, food and beverage, that type of thing. And then we also have people on our team that kind of work with myself on that. So while we have our Tuesday meeting, we also have lots of little offshoot meetings that are specific to whatever side of the event that we are on to. So there's kind of constant communication. I don't think there's a day that goes by where I don't interact with someone from our team on something throughout the day. But as far as kind of also the organization, we as a company, we use Google Docs. It ever starts everything from our email through that. And we really have a number of templated docs and sheets that are both internal for us to be organized. And then we also use that for our clients to kind of externally to kind of keep them, knowing what's happening in their planning, what's going on with their budget, their guest list, that type of thing too. So I think when it comes to like organization, so we're pretty dialed in. Each one of our events kind of has the same tools so people can go in and know where to find things from, where it might be a guest list, it might be a catering proposal, all of those things.
I love that. I could talk to you all and keep geeking out about team building. That could be like another hour unto itself. I
will say though, one thing, sorry to interrupt, is
please.
People put a lot of time and energy into like other programs, like Asana and Slack. I mean, we have so many people and you have to remember,
which one are we going to use?
So sometimes if we have 80 vendors on a job, they're like, I'm going to send you this in this format and this format. So at one time we're like in Honeybook and then we're in this thing and that thing, and it's exhausting. I think some people could definitely benefit from just taking a step back and just maybe not using all of those.
Saving it as a PDF and sending it.
For any vendors listening, planners just want PDFs of items. They don't want to become part of your platform to work with you.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. As a WedTech software, WedTech software company CEO, that it definitely lands. It's amusing and true. Like there's so many different tools and platforms and formats. It's really interesting. My mind kind of goes to just another sort of open-ended question. And Sunny, you got my mind turning in this direction when you talked about like there are a lot of experiences that kind of come to your mind that you would share time permitting. What's one of the biggest challenges that you all have had to overcome in building your company? And kind of how did you grow as a result of overcoming it?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest challenge was 2020.
I was gonna say, I didn't want to put words in your mouth. I figured we had already touched. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about the pandemic to the extent you all are comfortable sharing. Like, how did that wrecking ball? I mean, the wrecking ball hit everybody in the industry, right? Like, nobody was immune, no pun intended, to the wrecking ball of the pandemic. But like, how did it hit you all, and how did you overcome it, and how are you better as a result of that? What'd you say?
Did I block it out?
Oh yeah, there you.
It's interesting. When it started, myself and another gal on our team at the time were on the East Coast for some site visits, and we had a wedding like at the very beginning of April, and a lot of people were traveling in from overseas, and they started canceling. And you're like, what's going on? It's so weird. And then slowly but surely, more and more. And then when the flight stopped being able to come in from overseas, we were like, okay, this is really serious.
Yeah.
And I remember we actually called Mollie, and she was like, oh, you guys, you're being so dramatic. And I was like, are you being dramatic? I don't know. So, of course, everybody was naive in the beginning. And then, it was just a domino effect. And I think one of the things I will say I think we did really well was we stayed really calm. And I think it just kind of became a point where our clients and vendors even just needed to talk through things and talk through options. And, we were giving advice, but we weren't experts. We didn't know. All we could say was what we thought. We were reading the same thing everybody else was reading and going through the same motions. But I think what was really challenging was people were so scattered. And I think in hindsight, if that something like that were to ever happen again, I definitely think we would probably lead the coalition in the event industry of like, okay, everyone, this is going to be the messaging and this is how we're going to do this, and people can decide based on their comfort level what they want to do. But like everybody was on such different pages and people were just going crazy posting, on social media and doing things. And then people started hiding things and it just got so out of control that I think we just kind of took a step back and we were like, we're going to talk to people. We're going to listen to what people want to do. If people want to move forward with their event, we're going to figure out a way to let them do that, where they can do it safely, how we can be a part of it, if we can be a part of it, if we want to be a part of it. And, again, we had employees with little kids, like small 3-year-olds that were like obviously in a very different situation than us, without children. And we had people like myself who had a husband who, was deemed an essential worker and didn't get the luxury of ever staying home. And so I was like, okay, well, this is my situation. So I think we just tried to put everything into, we just tried to put it into compartments of this is what this person is dealing with as an employee. This is what this client's dealing with, and trying to figure out how to make it work where it still made sense for us. And we were fortunate. I mean, we have an attorney, so we got that person involved in just what our future looked like. And we had, again, some really good talks with other people in the industry that said, make a 6-month plan. And we were like, 6 months? And then make a 9-month plan, make a year plan. And we were like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this is, crazy. But I think we just stayed super connected and had the same feelings about it. And I think, it was easy to be in a position where you threw up your hands and said, we're not doing anything. But we obviously, as owners, like had, our mortgages and our bills and our, we had to eat and we had to do things. So we figured out a way to make it work for us and did things that, luckily and were safe and worked. And I don't know, it's kind of like it went by so fast, but every day was so slow.
Yeah.
So only way I can put it.
Yeah, it
It's like
still
Groundhog
seems like a
Day.
blur.
Every
Yeah.
week, the same thing would happen, but to a different person. It was like the next week of, well, now the events in June need to move. And then the next week, of July. And it just, it went by quickly, but so slowly at the same time.
And
Yeah.
in looking back, 2020, I think, was the year that we had the most events scheduled.
Wow.
So it was a lot to kind of move and do. And, again, we had people that, couldn't work anymore because they had to homeschool their kids. And that was, a job in itself. And so it definitely ended up for a while where it kind of just went back to Molly and I, which was nice because I think it was easier to decide things in such a scary, uncertain time. Like, okay, we didn't have, we weren't on the hook for employees. And then I think right around that time was also when California changed their independent contractor laws, which definitely affected
I
us. And
remember
so
that.
that was like another layer of how do you bring people back if you can't bring them back, full
the
blown,
way it
full time
was.
with benefits and workman's comp and all of that. So it was all kind of challenging.
Yeah, it definitely was. Again, across the board. I'm watching the time fly as it always does. And there's one question that I always ask on every interview, and I would put it to both of you. You can answer in whatever order you want. If you could give one piece of advice to everybody who's listening right now that would be as helpful as possible, based on all of your experience, not just building your current company, but preceding experience, what would that one piece of advice be?
I know what my answer is.
All right,
I'll go
let's have
first.
it.
My one piece of advice to anybody listening is don't believe everything that you see on social media. Most of it is smoke and mirrors. And just be true and authentic to the things that you want to do, and you will attract the people that you want to work with.
Ah, I love that. I really, really like that, son. And it's consistent with also what you were saying about one of your biggest lessons being this notion of just being real, and whether you do something good or bad, just being willing to hold up your hand and say, "Hey, that was me." Just like authenticity. Um, what about you, Molly? What are your thoughts on that? If you could give that one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would probably say that, don't ever think that any task or any job is, too small to be able to do as you're also trying to start out your own business and get there. I mean, again, as Sunna mentioned over and over, there's still days we take out the trash, we're putting people on a shuttle at an event, all of the things that aren't the glamorous side of things, but they also teach you skills to be able to kind of get to the next thing. So really just kind of stay humble, do the work, it will pay off.
Was that a number one piece of advice for you? I see the value in it. I just kind of want to hear from your vantage point why that's like a really valuable thing.
I think that it got us to where we are today and continuing to not only have a great team, but have great clients and do great events.
I love that. I love it. So, if people want to reach out to you all, if they have questions or if they just want to connect or take your advice about networking, like what's the best way for people to connect with you?
They can connect with us on our website or Instagram. Both of those are, Bash Please. Ours are website and Instagram. And from there, they can get phone numbers and emails and.
Love it. Well, on behalf of our Wedding Industry Insider audience and the whole Timeline Genius community, I just want to thank you both for taking time out of your very busy schedules to come and to share your knowledge and experience with our community.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.